In this video, I'm going to have a look at setting up a Windows Vista guest virtual machine using VMware Workstation Player 17.6.2. Now, unfortunately, the installation ISO isn't available in WinWorld. There's some unofficial sources on archive.org, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to convert Dell Windows Vista Business Service Pack 1 Reinstallation DVD into an ISO using NT Lite. Now, NT Lite doesn't officially support Windows Vista, so you're not going to be able to use most of the functionality of this utility. However, what we can do is open the Windows Vista reinstallation DVD using NT Lite, and we can save it as an ISO. So I'm going to select free, and then I'm going to select add image directory and just select the optical drive D because I'm not going to modify this. And then all I'm going to do is select create ISO at the top. And if I just go to downloads, I can just save this installation ISO as Dell Windows Vista Business Service Pack 1 x64. And I'm just going to use a similar label. Okay, so there's too many characters here, so business is too long. So let's just abbreviate this down to bus and then add x64. So now I have the installation ISO. I also need the updates. So I'm going to use the Windows Server update service, offline update, to patch the Windows Vista installation. Now, unfortunately, the Windows Server update service, which used Microsoft's servers, no longer works because Microsoft have removed the downloads from the servers. Fortunately, someone's saved the ISO that this utility creates, and it's got all the Windows Vista updates. We also need the VMware tools, and we've got the ISO here. We no longer need NT Lite, and the other two ISOs are downloading, so we can just get started in creating the Windows Vista guest virtual machine in the meantime. So launch VMware Workstation Player and select Player, File, New Virtual Machine, and then select I will install the operating system later. This will prevent a wizard from overriding the OEM defaults in the ISO. So we're going to select Windows Vista 64-bit edition, which matches the installation ISO. So here's location and name of the virtual machine. The default disk size is a bit restrictive, so we're just going to change this to 256 gigabytes. So this means up to a maximum size of 256 gigabytes. It won't occupy 256 gigabytes on your drive unless you fill the Windows Vista guest virtual machine up full of files. So we're going to change the memory to 4 gigabytes. We're going to change the number of processors to 2. Under CD DVD, we're going to select use ISO image file, and we're going to use the Windows Vista Business Service Pack 1 ISO. We're going to leave the network adapter, USB controller, sound card, and display at their default settings. Windows Vista only supported USB 2.0. So select close and then select finish. And now we can go ahead and select play virtual machine. And the Windows Vista guest virtual machine will boot from the Windows Vista reinstallation ISO. So for some reason this screen displays as blank unless you actually click into the virtual machine. And then when you do, its contents display. So select my language is English. And then I'm going to select English United Kingdom, and then I'm going to select install now. So I'm going to accept the license agreement, select next, and then select custom. And then I'm going to select disk 0, unallocated space, and then I'm going to select install. So it's going to copy the files, it's going to expand them, it's going to install the features, and then it's going to restart the computer to continue with the Windows setup. Okay, so the Windows Vista guest will reboot, and then you'll be prompted to set up your user account. So input your username and then select next. Input your computer name and then select next. It doesn't really matter what setting you select here because there's no more updates. Select next, work, and then start. And the Windows Vista setup will then continue to set up your user account. And you'll be taken to the Windows Vista desktop and you'll see this welcome screen. So the Windows Server Update service, offline update, doesn't work correctly for Windows Vista. So what actually happens is it gets stuck in an infinite loop searching for updates. So the way to get around this is to install some updates manually before using the Windows Server Update service offline update. And what we essentially want is Service Pack 2. Make sure that you're going to download the x64 version. And then we've got 4 smaller security updates. So once again, make sure you're going to download the x64 version. So I like to patch the Windows installation before installing system drivers. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to put all these updates together in a folder. And I'm just going to call this update CD. And what I want to do is convert this folder into an ISO. And to do that, I'm going to use image burn. So I'm going to go ahead and install image burn. And I'm just going to select no here because image burn hasn't been updated in the last decade. Okay, so I'm going to launch image burn and I'm going to select create image from files/folders. And let me just go to downloads and select this update CD folder. And then under destination, let's just go to downloads. And let's just change the name of the file name, otherwise it'll enter into the folder. So let's just call this Vista Update CD. And then just select yes, and then OK. So the updates ISO is now created. And we can load it in the optical drive of the Windows Vista guest. So let me just select browse. And then just select this update CD. Okay, so the first thing we want to install is Service Pack 2. And then we're going to want to select continue. And then select next, accept the license agreement, select next. And then you're going to need to select install and wait for a while for it to install. And you'll have to restart the Windows Vista guest multiple times in order to apply this update. Okay, so that update's now installed, and we can now install this 4 smaller updates. So you want to install them in the order listed. And then you're going to be prompted for a restart after each of the smaller updates. You can just select close and restart after installing the 4 updates. Okay, so that's the 3rd update. And now we can install the 4th update, and we need to restart here. So now we're going to change the CD DVD to the Windows Server Update Service offline update. So now that we have these updates, it shouldn't hang. So the program should autoplay. Let me just check to see whether these updates are installed, and you can see that they display in the installed updates. So we're essentially going to want to run this program. If the autoplay doesn't display, then you can navigate to the optical drive and launch this program here. So we want to check most of the boxes, and we also want to automatically reboot and recall, and then select start. So this is going to take a very long time, and I've sped this up 64 times. It took about an hour to update Windows Vista fully, and here where it says listing IDs of missing updates, this is where it hangs when you don't have the prerequisite updates that we installed manually before running Windows Service Update Service. Even when you have these updates installed, it's going to hang here for a while. So Windows Vista never had a security rollup update like they started introducing towards the end of Windows 7. So you need to install all 189 of these updates separately, and this is why it takes such a long time. So now we can see that our Windows Vista is fully patched, and we also have the .NET frameworks. So now we're going to install VMware tools, and the setup should automatically run. If not, navigate to the CD and select the setup 64. And then just select next, next, and then install. So installing VMware tools essentially installs the system drivers. So this will install the display driver, meaning you should be able to resize the window of the Windows Vista guest in the Windows 11 host, and the Windows Vista virtual machine should resize to occupy the size of this window. So let me just try and snap to the left. Okay, let me just make it full screen, and we can see that this is working as expected. Okay, so if I go to Start and right click the computer and select Properties, I should see the product ID and the activation status. So this is a Dell OEM installation media, so it's installed using Dell OEM system locked pre-installation. Now, because this system doesn't have a system license internal code within its BIOS, it's not activated offline automatically like it would on a Dell computer that came with Windows Vista. So you can just use it unactivated for the 30-day trial, and then I don't think Windows Vista locks you out, forcibly signs you out like Windows XP does. I think you just get a black screen and a watermark. I'm just going to create a backup of the virtual machine here because we've spent the time installing all the patches. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to edit the virtual machine's configuration file. So here you can add basically a configuration option using a line of code. So for example, we can change the BIOS boot delay to 20,000 milliseconds, and this gives us time to enter the Windows Vista's virtual machines, virtual BIOS. So what you can do is you can pass through the system license internal code 2.1, and this generally only works if you have a system that came with a Windows 10 Pro OEM license. Adding these lines of codes to a system without this system license internal code of 2.1 will cause the Windows Vista guest not to boot. Another option in the virtual machine configuration file is to use the BIOS 440 file name, and there's modded ROMs that have system license internal code of 2.1. So basically you need to add this line of code, and you need to make sure the file is within the folder of the Windows Vista guest virtual machine, and that the file name is the same. So if the virtual machine has a system license internal code of 2.1, then Windows Vista will be activated. I'm leaving this unactivated because I don't want to violate any license agreements. Okay, so now I'm going to have a look at attaching a USB device to the Windows Vista guest virtual machine. So I'm going to attach a Logitech Pro 9000. And in order to use this, I need the Logitech Pro 9000 driver. So let me just go to the Logitech website. And I'm just going to select downloads. And then I'm just going to select Windows 7, and we can see that this driver is also for XP and Vista. So let's just select download now. And because VMware Tools is installed, we should be able to drag and drop between the Windows 11 host and the Windows Vista guest. So let's just drag and drop to the downloads folder and begin the installation. So the Logitech Pro 9000 webcam is detected, and it displays here, and it seems to work as expected. So this camera had a relatively high resolution, but the data stream was too large for USB 2.0, and that's why it's quite laggy. So I've swiped my hand up and down quite fast, and the response time of the camera is a lot slower. So let's shut down the Windows Vista guest. And now let's have a look at adding a device using a serial port. So if I right click the start button and select device manager in the Windows 11 host, under ports I can see I've got this USB to serial adapter, and it's using COM3 and here we can see the currently set speed, and we could change the port if we wanted. This would require a restart of the Windows 11 guest. So we can open up VMware Workstation and select the Windows Vista guest and edit the virtual machine settings. So here we can select add, and we can add a serial port, and we can use the auto detect for just a single serial port, but if we're using multiple, we may find it better just to specify what port is being used on the Windows 11 host. So now we can have a look at the device manager within the Windows Vista guest. Yeah, and Windows Vista was more aggressive with the user account control prompt than more modern Windows versions. So if we have a look at ports here, we can see that this is COM1, and we can once again change the port settings and the speed of the port to whatever is required by the device that you're going to attach to the port.